It's time to look at your reigning Eastern Conference finalists, the Indiana Pacers. What's in store for the season ahead? There's one man who has the answers, and his name is Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and just like Drippo, I don't mind because I know that I'm Himothy. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Across the summer, FanDuel is giving all customers every day either a boost or a bonus. So go ahead and go to FanDuel.com right now to learn more. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. Give us the thumbs, the bangs, the comments. It's all happening. We're here to talk Indiana Pacers, a team that obviously was expected to step forward last season and got much further than I think most people thought they would, but I also think that those same people would say, yeah, not a real Eastern Conference Finals bid. Who knows? We're going to talk to the host of the Locked On Pacers podcast, Tony East, to discuss the Indiana Pacers. We might as well just do it now. Now we are here talking Pacers, like I said, and I'm not sure if you're aware, mystery guests who have already announced, but the rearview mirror was invented in Indiana. So that's why I believe that you are now labeled a traitor to Indiana, because I heard that you took all the rearview mirrors off your card because it's only looking forward for Tony East.
Only forward here in Indiana. It's very scary driving, actually. Traffic is a bit of an alarming thing.
Maybe they need more rearview mirrors. Just put them all over the car just so everyone can pay attention to what's going on. Tony East, welcome to the show. We're here to talk about the forward-moving Indiana Pacers. Forget the Indiana invention, the rearview mirror. It is about looking forward. And this team, I said this in the intro before you came on, is that people expected them to take a step forward last season, but I would say that a bunch of people would look at what they did and go, yeah, maybe not that far. Like, I don't think that is real or that is what we expected. Do you think that this conference finals experience, look, like they're a conference finals level team, they made the conference finals, but I would say the general perception is that they aren't that team. Is that how you view it?
Sort of. You know, I would have predicted them to beat the Bucks probably either way. They smoked the Bucks a lot during the regular season. They certainly had luck on their side and their postseason opponents specifically, and they were well equipped to take advantage. That said, I do think people are a little low on or a little too luck infused in that discussion. I mean, they had the best offense in the playoffs, like by a lot. Even when it was all said and done, they were the only team that scared the Celtics consistently, even though they got swept in that series. Like, they are going to be, again, one of the best offenses in the league. And yeah, they've got to guard better. And if they don't, then maybe that will be looked at as a fluke. But they have Tyrese Haliburton still. Last time I checked, like, they're going to score and they're going to be a tough out in the regular season every night because of that. And they have a lot of young guys who can take a step forward. I obviously understand that the top of the East got better, but I do think they are closer to that than people give them credit for, even though they're probably still like fourth or fifth in the East if you just had to rank the teams.
I think part of maybe the skepticism is the injuries that get blown up, but also the fact that when we look, and we're going to put this up now, is what this team did in the offseason. The answer is nothing. Like, there's hardly anything that happened. They drafted Johnny Furphy in the second round. There's Tristan Newton, Enrique Freeman, who was in the second round too. They still haven't even signed. James Wiseman is really the only free agent signing on this team. So there's just not a lot that actually went on because most of their work was done last season. So when I ask all the hosts, who the biggest addition is, obviously that's not an easy thing for someone like you to do when you're looking at that list. And yeah, the name you came up with is a big name. He was the second overall pick, was James Wiseman. Now, the question here is, there's no question. I think that he is bad, and I think he's been bad his entire career, and I don't really think that he's going to ever become good. The question here about James Wiseman is, Tony, is that do you think he's actually going to be someone who is challenging for minutes, or is he just like emergency third string center and that backup spot is pretty clearly Isaiah Jackson's?
Yeah, I think Isaiah Jackson's got the backup spot locked down. He had it locked down in the playoffs last year, even with Jalen Smith still on the team. And Jalen Smith got $27 million from Chicago this summer. Look, the bet on Wiseman makes sense, right? They have earned the right to do this. because Obi Toppin and Aaron Nesmith and Tyrese Haliburton and everyone from the 2020 draft came to Jalen Smith even came to Indiana and got a lot better, right? So their player development program has been working recently. It's just different now that they're trying to win instead of develop talent. So if they can develop Wiseman, it'd be a home run, right? Like he's huge and fast, but no one else has done that yet. Golden State and Detroit have tried. So I get why they did it, even though I thought they would go for a more established big, but that is probably their most impactful addition, at least in terms of what they've done in the offseason, because I don't know anything about the draft picks, but I don't expect him to be in the rotation opening night, although center is the most commonly injured position. So he'll definitely play at times.
And Carlisle often will rotate those backup center positions. But I do think that it is relatively clear that it is Isaiah Jackson in that spot, which people love Isaiah Jackson's fantasy potential. We've wanted this for a while. And it at least puts him a little bit closer to that. If Turner does get hurt, that we do expect a larger role from Jackson. And then there's a real chance of sort of a breakout. In terms of the other guys who were drafted, like, is there any word on what they're doing with Enrique Freeman? Unless I've just missed it. I haven't seen that he's actually been signed yet.
You're correct. He hasn't. I mean, I am a little bit reading between the lines, but the fact that they signed their other two-way guys on the same day leads me to believe that they liked his summer league so much that they're considering a roster spot for him or a two-way. There's no way he would get nothing, obviously. They drafted him. So if they knew for sure it was a two-way, they would have just done it when they did Newton and Quentin Jackson. So that's just a bit of a guess. They have Kendall Brown and I guess Cole Swider. We'll see what that comes in at on non-guaranteed deals. So I would imagine that's the decision, but I'm almost certain it will be a two-way or more for him. It's just what it'll actually be.
In terms of the guys that left the team, again, not much changing there. Jalen Smith goes to Chicago. Doug McDermott goes to the Ether. He hasn't signed anywhere. Oscar Tshiebwe and Isaiah Wong were on the two ways. Last season, Wong was playing Summer League for Phoenix, and Tshiebwe was playing for Indiana, and he just sort of does the thing that he does. He grabs rebounds, but no real spot for him at the moment in the NBA. But that does bring us to talk about, again, we're going to focus on this backup center position because it is pretty important, I think, and they do lose Jalen Smith, who had, well, his role in Indiana was variable, starting power forward, backup center, third string center, backup power forward. He was all over the place. This, in terms of, as the graphic just refuses to come up there, I don't know why that didn't come up, but that's okay. We'll figure that out in a second. No, that's what I wanted. I wanted this one. Oh, the perils of trying to sort it out yourself. Jalen Smith is up on the screen now for those of you watching. Is this a big loss, or did Jackson do enough to just be like, we don't need you here? Or is it more of a case of Jalen Smith saying, I have got a bigger opportunity somewhere else, and the Pacers saying, cool, you don't have that here, see you later?
Yeah, the Pacers are currently like $400,000 from the tax. And so I think finances had something to do with that. He got a raise to go to Chicago. But I mean, last season, Jalen Smith at his best was awesome, right? Like he made every three in 15 games or something. He also missed every three in 14 games. I believe in half of his appearances, or maybe one less than half, he either made or missed every single three he took, right?
That's a crazy stat.
I know. I used that in our season recap I did with Cooper on him. It's remarkable to look at. So some games he was like, you can't get this guy off the floor. And some games it was like, how quick can we get Turner back out there? So it was really it's just really interesting that for a long time he had that spot held down. But I kind of wonder if that's a confidence thing. And in the postseason, he had none. He only played more than 10 minutes twice in the whole playoffs. And Isaiah Jackson played and was good in those games, especially in that Knicks series. So if that had not happened where Isaiah Jackson was good, I think there would be like, oh, what are they going to do with the backup five? But I mean, that's almost like their whole season's about the playoffs now, right? So proving that they have that kind of guy already on their team, I think made it a lot easier for them to go, well, we can't really afford you anyway. So I think a lot of factors were at play between his consistency, the emergence of Jackson, because they had too many bigs last year. They don't have any room to have Jalen Smith play the four, which is something they did at times before they acquired Siakam. So just a lot of snowballing factors that made it harder for them to have all the centers they had, made it easy for them to, I think, let him walk because their center rotation is now pretty set. They've got three guys that they like.
Yeah, straightforward. And if you haven't gathered the undertone from this first segment of the show, it's that Isaiah Jackson is pretty locked into a solid role. That might be 18 minutes. It might be 22 minutes. Carlisle can move those centers around. Like Miles Turner didn't play 30 minutes a night last season. So we just keep an eye on where Isaiah Jackson's role is.
And I would add, too, that they flexed a lot, even during the regular season at times, but mostly during the playoffs. If they need to, Obi Toppin plays the five sometimes, right? So that they're ready for that opportunity should it be something they have to do also.
Absolutely. We're going to be back to talk more paces in a sec. Today's episode is brought to you, though, by FanDuel Sportsbook, because right now in the summer, as the summer does start to wind down, though, sports will start to ramp up, but it's been a barren wasteland. There's been the WNBA that's going on. The Olympics are on at the moment. Major League Baseball's there, but everything else is dormant. But FanDuel knows they've got a little something for you. Every customer, not just these new blow-ins who come in as a new customer and get the bonus. Everyone. Every customer on FanDuel gets something every day through the summer. You get a bonus or a boost. That's how they roll. A bonus, a boost, every customer, every day, all summer long. Now, I assume that this promotion finishes on the exact end of summer, which you guys in America have different seasonal dates that we have, which always throws me off. Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't your seasons end on like the 20th of a month or 21st? Is that right? Yeah. We bang on the first. No, it was not random. It runs on the solstice dates. The like winter solstice, summer solstice, like the 21st. So that's sort of that. We just say, hey, bang, summer for us, December 1st. And we just run in 3 month periods. But that doesn't matter because, come on, man. Come on. It's all right. Anyway, so that's when your FanDuel offer ends at 8:43 a.m. on September 22nd. Get your daily boost and bonus. I'm sure I'll do a live read right at that time just to tell you that is ending over on FanDuel Sportsbook. So go to FanDuel.com right now and make the most of your summer until 8:43 a.m. September the 22nd. FanDuel Sportsbook. I don't know what I was going to say. I was going to say something, but I think I was going to say don't forget to gamble responsibly. That was definitely a really good ad read. Fantastic from me. All right, we're going to move on to the next part, and we're going to talk about projected starters. It isn't particularly controversial or confusing, I don't think, Tony. We're going to have Jarace Haliburton in there. We're going to have Pascal Siakam. We're going to have Miles Turner. I guess there could be some discussion about what happens at the other two spots, Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith, but I would say that not many people are going to argue about Nembhard. Got the contract extension, put up the big numbers in the playoffs at times. I'm going to talk more about Nembhard later, so I'll leave him here. I do want to just focus a little bit here on Aaron Nesmith, who didn't start all of last season, then did end up replacing Obi Toppin as the starting power forward, was a really high foul player, but a really strong defender who doesn't put up huge numbers in the counting stats, but became back to being an elite shooter. Now, I say all of this because I would say that his position in the starting five is the most tenuous. There are arguments you could say, well, what about our top 6 pick, Benedict Mathurin? Wouldn't he have an opportunity to start? What about our top 7 pick, Jarace Walker, who they are grooming to play the 3? Couldn't these guys have opportunities to push Aaron Nesmith?
No.
Thank you. Good answer.
I don't necessarily mean that to dump on either of those lottery picks, who of course they've kept because they believe in their potential. But I mean, if you're constructing a lineup around Tyrese Haliburton and Pascal Siakam and their offensive skills, again, if Haliburton was on the floor, like it could have been like me and Josh and 2 guys off the street, like they would have had a 116 at least offensive rating, and they routinely pushed 120 or higher with him out there. Like what they need to have around him is shooting, defense, and quick decision makers. And guess what? Nesmith shot it really well last year, like you said. And yes, he fouls a lot, but he has tough assignments, and he's their only really wing-sized guy besides Siakam. He's a good defender. Same with Andrew Nembhard, who's a little worse than Nesmith as a shooter, but probably a little better as a defender. And Siakam and Turner, like you said, are locks to start. So that lineup, that's what I guessed would be the starting 5 right after they traded Buddy Hield in February, and it took them a few games to get there, but they never went away from it once they got to it because it was so obviously the best one, even in the postseason. So yes, Mathurin, they picked him high. He's good enough to be in a rotation, but he needs the ball and is not as good of a defender right now as Nesmith and Nembhard. If he needs touches, he should not play as often with the combo of Haliburton and Siakam. And Jarace might not play at all to start the season this year. I'm sure we'll get to him later. He's got some growing to do. So Mathurin probably has the best case of any non-starter just because of his long-term potential, but they're not in a mode of looking at potential anymore. They're trying to win games right now, and their starting 5 last year proved to be very good. I think they'll roll with that again starting the season.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And then that brings us to your projected bench grouping, and it sort of highlights all that stuff. We've got TJ McConnell there, who was out of the rotation early last season and then forced his way back in with some of the best play of his career, honestly. Benedict Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, who was also didn't play much at all, then had some real strong moments in the postseason. He also played in Summer League and didn't look very good in that setting, so we'll see where that goes. Obi Toppin and Isaiah Jackson. I can see Shepherd maybe falling out at some point, and maybe that does get replaced by a Jarace Walker or Johnny Furphy in that bench group. But when you look at that group and you look at Obi Toppin, who had some okay moments last season, but he really is just a reserve, and Mathurin, there's just too many guys to have a look at some of these players, whether it's TJ or Mathurin or Toppin. Unless there are major injuries, there's too many players in there that are going to, for them to see sizable roles. It's not like we're sitting there like, I'll just reference like a Jordan Clarkson on the Jazz, where he's still going to get 30 minutes necessarily coming off the bench. I don't really see that for any of these guys.
Yeah, it'll be tough for any of them to have major roles, right? Last year, I think the most bench minutes guy was Mathurin at like 24, 25-ish. I'd have to double check that, right? And I'd imagine that will still be the same. But it's different now because they had, like, when Mathurin got hurt in early March, I mean, from the rest of the season on, TJ McConnell was like, a top 5 isolation scorer? And that sounds comical to say out loud, but like, did you watch the Pacers? It happened.
It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he took on a scoring and passing role remarkably well. And Obi Toppin was one of 3 guys, the other 2 being Chet and Wemby, to hit 100 threes and have 100 dunks last year. Like, he really fits offensively with this Pacers team. And so, because he can shoot now, he kind of fits with anybody. So this bench really works, but you can't play it a lot. And so that's kind of a tricky balance of minutes that they have. Yeah, Mathurin was the only guy over 21 minutes of these bench guys that we're talking about who's still back from last season. So I'd imagine they're all going to be about the same range as last season, give or take a few for Isaiah Jackson, just because of Jalen Smith's departure. And that makes a lot of sense. And all their lineups click and work. And they really only trusted 8 guys last year, but now they kind of have to do more with Mathurin. So I'll be curious. What you said about Ben Shepherd, but they love him. He can guard and he takes threes when he's open and doesn't mess up very much. But I agree that would be the spot that if someone like Walker or Furphy snuck in, it would be that spot.
Because I'm a professional, I'm going to really transition that little part into this next part. So we're going to do a key injury update. And I know that he wasn't necessarily always injured at the end of last season, but he was, because Tyrese Haliburton missed so much time throughout the year. We saw we saw Haliburton miss that chunk of games, came back, unbelievably early from a hamstring injury. Some would say too early. In fact, I would, and I said it at the time. And did not look himself for a long period of time, and then got injured again in the playoffs. So, obviously he's playing for Team USA at the moment. The hamstring is totally okay. We don't have to relitigate why he came back. We all know why he came back early. But I want to just use this to talk a little bit about Haliburton and talk a little bit about, if he was to be hurt again. First question, do you think that they would push Andrew Nembhard to point guard and start Mathurin, or would they put TJ McConnell in and keep him next to Nembhard? Like, how do you see that sort of priority? Because it's not debatable to me that McConnell was a much better player than Mathurin last season. How do you think that they would run that sort of alignment if Haliburton had to go down again this season?
Yeah, that was, you nailed all the parts of Haliburton's season that don't need to be rehashed. I'll try to answer this in 65 words at a minimum. How about that? That can be my I think they'd move Nembhard to the 1 and then start another guard. But I don't.
Could be Shepherd.
It's hard to say. Part of Mathurin's, decision with the second units, he can have the ball as much as he needs to. Maybe he could. Nembhard can't have the usage Haliburton does. No one really can in the league. But maybe I do wonder, and I wonder this because they did this in the conference finals, if they would start Ben Shepherd, because he's low usage, and then Mathurin can still have it as much as he needs to with those bench groups. But I think they didn't have Mathurin in the conference finals either. So it's not really fair to just point at that and say, that's what they did before. So I would guess that your prediction is correct. It would be Nembhard at the 1 and Mathurin at the 2 in those cases. But we've seen that Rick Carlisle really likes to keep the structure of his bench together in terms of how it plays. And so if their identity is really based on McConnell and Mathurin just smashing those units, it would not surprise me if that's what they did.
The other thing about Haliburton is he was awesome to start the season. Everyone was talking about how good he is, top 3 offensive player in basketball. Is he in the discussion for MVP? Pinged his hammy, it looked really bad. Came back to all that, and then he struggled. But, Tony, I want to sort of get like an estimate, because no one can know this answer, but I want to get an estimated guess from you of like the decline in Haliburton's play post-injury, the decline in some of his numbers, shooting numbers, usage numbers. How much do you attribute to lack of confidence in the leg, or the addition of Pascal Siakam? Because we didn't really get to see Haliburton running at absolute full tilt, destroying teams when Siakam was there. Once he came back,
we
don't know. Like I don't know, but I want to see your educated guess as to which one of those is the larger impact.
Can I blow your mind with a third option as well?
Go for it.
The lack of Buddy Hield on the team.
Yep.
I think played a role here. So I think the biggest thing that changed from his pre-injury to post-injury reality, because when he was out is when they traded for Siakam. So it's kind of hard to marry up all these conflicting factors, like you said, right? So if you look after the injury, even when he was like kind of like not sucking, but like for his standards, not playing well, he was making his 2-pointers at like above 60% rate. He was passing more often to good shots, like by the numbers, but he didn't have Buddy Hield on his team anymore. And he wasn't making threes. So his assist numbers were down because his teammates weren't shooting as well because they lost a good shooter. And he himself was not making threes. Like Pacers were like bottom 5 in 3-point percentage for a little over a month. So from the return of his injury to this terrible stretch he had in mid-March from 3, I think he was like he was at 28.3% on 6.5 per game. Yeah. Everything else was like, for the rest of the season, he was 39% from deep, right? So yeah, that's a terrible month and a half. I'm not going to excuse that. It happened. But I think the fact that in that stretch, he was hurt, so he couldn't get that like off his left foot fading from the right wing 3 that he just made like every time. It felt like for the first 2 months of the season. Without Buddy Hield, he became the off-ball guy for them, right? So when Siakam would have it, he would be running a lot of that Hield stuff. He talked about that a lot. Big adjustment. He's doing some of that with Team USA right now. All of that, I think, played into his, for lack of a better term, struggles, again, compared to his expectation. He was still pretty good by the numbers. But I think that now that he's done it for a year, they figured that out, right? He shot it better in the postseason. His numbers rebounded at the end of March, and Siakam will have a training camp with the team. It's possible that he's not, the guy he's been for his whole career from 3, but I'd expect him to get pretty close to it again, just because all those factors are kind of, to bring it back, in the rear view mirror for Indiana, and he can really kind of get going from deep again.
It is going to be something to watch, really, and we need to sort of see full health, full training camp, Siakam, full health, full training camp, Haliburton together, and see how the usage distributes, because it might be lower than what Haliburton was doing before. We don't know. We're going to talk a little bit more about Siakam later on, but for as good as a player he is, I'm not sure how much there is to talk about, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's busy. Life is busy, work is busy, kids are busy, whatever it is, it's busy, but sometimes we need to make sure we take that time out to take care of ourselves. Self-care is important. You might live by an idea of never skip leg day, but maybe you should be not skipping self-care day as well. Whatever that is. Is it going to a spa? Is it getting your little toes done at a pedicure? Is it going and sinking beers with your mates? I don't know. Whatever it is, self-care can be and should be a non-negotiable. Therapy can also be one of those things that is part of self-care. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try, because it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a therapist who fits your needs, and if that therapist doesn't click with you, and that happens, who cares? That's what happens. You just get a new one, no charge, easy, start again, because you've got to find that right match. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so we are here again now, back to talk Indiana Pacers, Tony. That's what we do here on this show. We want to talk about a player to watch. Again, I ask all of the people coming on to give me their answer to this, and you went with the man who just signed that big-ish contract extension, Andrew Nembhard. Now, I want to just chuck something ahead, because it is really important. We know that there is amplified eyes, views, thoughts, memories on the playoffs, right? Andrew Nembhard had some really big games. You heard the term. I'm sure you heard it. Wow, this is the next Jalen Brunson. Haliburton was out. He stepped up. He went crazy. Look what happens when they gave him a starting nod. And my pushback is never to shit on these guys, even though he is from Canada and everyone from Canada sucks. They all know that. That's okay. Andrew Nembhard started big chunks of the season. He started in place of Tyrese Haliburton many times over the first 2 years of his career, even last season. And he didn't do anything remotely resembling what he did in the playoffs. In those games, he was outplayed consistently, I thought, by TJ McConnell, who was coming off the bench. So this, again, Not saying that Nembhard can't develop into this, elite level, high usage player. I think it's impossible, but I'm not close to impossible. I don't think he can do it, but it's not like, wow, he finally got a chance and look what happened, because he started many games during the season and he was not that player, was he?
No, he was not. He is still a goodly ball. Like his peaks are insane, right?
Unbelievable.
Everybody remembers the Lakers buzzer beater that he followed up by out-dueling Steph in Golden State. Like, what just happened? And then to close the season before the last one, the last month of the season when Haliburton was out, he was good that stretch, or at least statistically good that stretch when he had kind of an extended run at point guard. But you're right that it hasn't been all the time, and McConnell has been very good in a similar role. My reason for breakout is one that I've just been high on him. Last year before the season, I predicted he'd be the team's X factor. That wasn't accurate until the playoffs, but I've just kind of always had this feeling about what he could be. Mine is about, like, statistically, he is very good without Haliburton, even though it's not to the level we saw in the conference finals, obviously. Like, his assists per 100 possessions more than doubles without Haliburton. His scoring per 100 possessions goes up by like 6 or 7. He clearly can do more than he's asked to do when he's starting at the 2. But what I think is the logical player comps, not Brunson. Although if you look at Brunson's contract history, not his play history, his contract history, we're getting very eerily similar on those timelines. It's very funny. What I think about is more like, can he be someone who plays like, not at this level, obviously, plays like Drew Holiday or a Derek White type of player, or he said someone else he studies is Kyle Lowry, right? That kind of player, I think, is more what he could be. He's only been in the league for 2 years and has already had so many like high moments where you're like, whoa, And so I think you are right to say that, yes, maybe what he did in those 2 games is like a little, and by a little, maybe a lot too rosy on what his peak is. But he clearly has something, like, no one could stay in front of him for those games. No one could. Even the guys I just said, Drew Holiday and Derek White. He just got to the rim whenever he wanted. So there's something in there. He's a pretty good shooter. He's a good defender. He's just pesky and good. Everyone who's been on his team or coached him is like, yeah, this kid's awesome. So maybe he'll never be totally actualized in the role that everybody wants to see playing next to Haliburton, but he is just very, very good and solid. And every year they run into some hurdle where the problem is like, oh, we need Andrew Nembhard to solve it. And he does. So I don't know what that translates to statistically or how much better he'll be, but there's a reason they were tripping all over themselves to give him the max extension the second they could, because he's awesome and they want to keep him around.
Yeah, look, I say this, not that I don't think that he can be a really solid player. He can. It's more just to provide your context around this, because I'm not sure if you know this off the top of your head, Tony, but you know how many games he started last season?
20-something low?
No, 47. Like
I was thinking just at point guard. Okay, I don't know why I just.
So he started 47 games, and if you look at if you guys are watching on the video on the screen, like, his usage was under 16% in 25 minutes. So he shot really well, but that's really, really low. Like, that is a incredibly low usage number. So while I do think that he is going to establish as the permanent starter this season, because again, it was in flux. It was Mathurin, then it was Healed last season, and they went to Nembhard. I think he's established in that role. I do think that the consistency is part of it, and like you said, the peaks have been crazy. He just has never been able to sustain those peaks for any period of time that's longer than like 3 or 4 games in a row, really. So that's what we want to watch. I'm excited to see where it goes. I have some skepticism about how he can maintain at a higher ramped up level, but you can't deny the things that happened. It's more about there are other things that people do sort of forget about it at times, and that's where sometimes we need to just give it a level of, hey, let's just wait and see what happens.
I get a comment on YouTube like once a week about them trading Haliburton to give Nembhard a bigger role. Like, that's how pilled Pacers fans are on this guy. He just has those kind of, he just has that kind of, that oomph and gravity to him that fans really love.
There's always that one player on nearly every team where someone's like, they just need to give him the keys, and it'd be like like something like completely like crazy. Not saying that it's a bit like, let's trade away our top 5 MVP candidate to see if what Andrew Nembhard can do. Like, guys, I think we're okay with that. Let's talk about who, Tony, you have as a make or break player, and this again ties into that guard position. We've mentioned this man a couple of times already because he was given a large role out of the gate as a rookie. He had an opportunity last season, Benedict Mathurin, to be the starter, and it did not work. It did not last. His usage fell down considerably. Playing in that starting group, he still maintains a real lack of offensive vision at times, a narrow Forget about rearview mirrors. This guy doesn't even have side mirrors. He just looks one way, and the shooting numbers fluctuate. Even his ability to get to the line, which was so strong as a rookie, did drop off. So it sounds crazy. It's year 3. He's a top 6 pick. I think he was a first team all rookie guy. But you're right. Like, there have been so many people who have now overtaken him in the rotation. Like, even 26th pick Ben Shepherd. There are plenty of guys who have overtaken him. So look, what does he need to do? And do you think he's capable of doing it?
Yeah, it's weird to answer him for this question because first, like some other teams, the answer for a make or break guy would be someone who's like, can they be good or not good? Like Ben Mathurin is a good player.
He is.
The question for make or break for him and with me is, and this is even really like stuff he's talked about in his ex interview, is about his fit with the Pacers, right? And how he helps this specific team win, because a lot of what he is tasked to do and asked about, he's talked about how he wants Rick Carlisle to coach him hard, is quick decisions, right? Catch, drive, pass, catch, shoot, and he is a catch, size it up, make a move and then set something else up. And so there are games. He had a game against Detroit that everybody will point to where it's like he made a bunch of different types of passes, was getting to the rim and creating offense, scored a bunch of points. Like, we're like, oh my gosh, this guy, if this could all click every night, would be awesome. And then there are other games where it doesn't work at all. And so the problem is with a lot of guys on the Pacers who fit this bill of like developing ball handlers is they have Tyrese Haliburton, who has the ball all the time. And so if you want to pair that guy with Haliburton, they have to be good at either keeping the ball moving or shooting or defense, I guess. And he improved as a shooter last year. Certainly, I think he hit 38% from 3, almost 37.4, right? Better there. His on-ball defense is good. His team defense is still developing. So in some ways, he improved where he needed to. His assist rate went up. His steal rate went up. His block rate went up. He fewer turnovers. That's great. At the same time, it just still hasn't all clicked and fit with what they're doing, which is why they didn't keep starting him after that open to the season. And so the make or break for him is, can he do the stuff that would make him a great fit with the Pacers? Because, again, there's no denying he's a good player and would help a lot of teams with his scoring and ability to get to the foul line. 4th in Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. He got 6th Man of the Year, high-level votes. The question is, can that gel with how the Pacers play? And he had a really big moment of, this was the most dramatic in a good way that he's been about it during his exit interview. He's like, my whole life, I've been the best player on the team. I've been asked to score, be that kind of guy. And in the NBA, that just hits you at some point. It's like, dang, I'm not, I'm just not anymore. And you have to adapt your game. And so I think he knows it. I think he knows the skills that are required of him. And you're right that when he drives, sometimes it's tunnel vision to get to the rim and either draw a foul, which he's good at, or score. But if he can just develop some extra passing style, be a really good catch and shoot guy when he knows the ball's coming his way, that would go such a long way in him being a good fit with this team and B, being an important piece, because he's very good and under contract for a while.
I'm glad that he said all of those things, because they're one of the things that I talk about quite a bit on this show is that, like, people will look honestly through the draft process and they'll see this guy who comes in with 18 usage and go, oh, he can be a 3-and-D guy. The 3-and-D guys in the NBA are the players who are 27 usage and the best players on their team, and they have to scale things back. It's not the players who are role player 3-and-D players in college usually who do that same thing. And then my next question is always like, when you don't have the ball and you're taking every shot, do you do anything? And if you can't, then you're useless to majority of teams. And that's what he does need to do. Now, again, I criticize his passing. He did increase his assist rate, but a lot of other things did, like his rim finishing numbers dropped way off. And everything else was sort of incremental improvements. The 3-point shooting is a big improvement, but his impact stats went down. His steal rate went from 1% to 1.1. His blocks from 0.5 to 0.7. They're small, they're important, but it was just like overall, he just didn't expand that out. But that self-awareness, and a lot of players don't have that self-awareness to know, hey, look, man, I can't be this guy. I need to try and change. Now, whether he can do it or not remains to be seen. But that is, again, I do agree with you. It is make or break. Other players pass him. Other players who are less talented or less skilled are ahead of him now, and he needs to change what he does, or he ends up on a team that's bad and finds his position in like a worse Zach LaVine on a bad team and just gets lots of shots and averages 20 a game and impacts losing versus impacting winning. So it is intriguing to see where he goes and whether he improves from here or actually whether he gets worse and other guys continue to move forward ahead of him. A big season coming up for Benedict Mathurin. Tony, to me, the major storyline for this team this season is something we referenced earlier. Was last season a fluke? Do you think that this team, like, they didn't do anything really in the offseason to get better. The thing that they're banking on is Pascal Siakam's full offseason and integration with his team. So is that enough to make this last season not a fluke and be a perennial conference finals level team?
I think the other bet they're making is that they have so many younger or lesser experienced guys that some of them, if not all of them, will be better, right? Like last year, their playoff rotation, Tyrese Haliburton on his rookie scale deal, Andrew Nembhard on his second round pick exception deal, Nesmith was on his rookie scale deal, Obi Toppin was on his rookie scale deal, Isaiah Jackson was on his rookie scale deal, Ben Shepherd was on his. You get what I'm saying. That doesn't even include Mathurin and Walker. So the bet on why they were such a natural run it back candidate beyond their finances is because it's easy for them to say, yes, we think we can be better with the exact same team, because if we have an offseason with everybody together, guys get better as they do in the summers. We have guys playing internationally who can get better there. That is the vision of how they improve as a team, and that has sometimes worked for teams. That has also sometimes not worked for teams, especially when that is paired with going from a team that did not have expectations to a team that now does have expectations. How does that change how you react to losing and winning and things like that? So I think it was a fine bet and choice to make to largely run it back, but they are counting on, unless maybe their best players can get better too, but I think they are counting on one or two young guys to take a step forward and be a better player this year to be then themselves a better team that isn't like they clinched the playoff spot on the last day of the season, right? Like a better team would not have that happen. So I think that's a big bet for them. Is we have so many younger or inexperienced guys that one or two, or if all of them do, that'd be amazing, obviously. But if one or two of them take a step forward, they'll be a better team than last year.
One of the burning questions for me with this team, Tony, is we've referenced his name a couple of times already, but what is the plan with Jarace Walker? Like, they traded down with the Wizards last season because they didn't think the Wizards would take him. They wanted him. They got him pick 7. They traded for Obi Toppin to play the same position, and Walker just didn't play. And then this season in Summer League, they were playing him more as a 3. He was just taking a million 3-pointers. He was taking pull-up 3s. He was initiating offense. Initially, to me, the idea was him coming out of the draft was he's a 4 who can play small ball 5 with some passing ability. And now they're sort of going the opposite direction to that. But like we detailed earlier, there's not even necessarily a clear path for minutes there. It's not common for a top 7 pick to not play at all, really, in their first 2 seasons. And it seems like the plan is a little bit all over the place. So what is the plan? Like, where are we at with what Jarace Walker has done? Is it been a disappointment to the organization, do you think?
Yeah, let's call Philip Rossman-Reich and copy-paste his answer on Anthony Black, right? Like, it's very similar how those teams are constructed and how those minutes loads work for those guys who went pretty close in the draft. So one thing I would love to know, by the way, I don't know if you have the graphics year over year, is I might have predicted Jarace Walker on the show to start last year. Like, when I was doing my rotation projections for the season, wondered if Walker or Toppin would start, but I thought they'd play about even minutes. That was wrong, obviously. Toppin played much more, and they had like Jalen Smith playing the 4 at times, and they didn't even have a backup 4 at times. Jordan Nwora played 18 games for them last year. Like, all that happened, and that said some things about where they thought of where Jarace was. Rick Carlisle did not like how much he gambled defensively. His offensive role was kind of unclear. They played him more in the G League. The difference is a couple things. One, he's gotten better at those defensive gambles. You saw that a little bit in Summer League. 2 is his 3 ball has gotten way better. Like, he legitimately can shoot it, which was a question for him coming out of college. The reason I think he'll play more this year is I just mentioned a couple of the names, but last year they had their rotation, and then there was like a blockade of players who weren't in the rotation that were still ahead of Jarace Walker, like Jordan Nwora, for example. But they don't have Bruce Brown anymore. They don't have Buddy Hield anymore. Doug McDermott is gone. Jordan Nwora is gone. If any player gets hurt, like anyone in the rotation, you could get minutes for Jarace Walker. If a 4 gets hurt, it's obviously an easy. You just stick him in. If a 3 gets hurt, and obviously easy, you just stick him in. If a 2 gets hurt, move Ben Shepherd down a spot, and you can play Jarace. If a 1 gets hurt, move Andrew Nembhard down. You can play Jarace. If a 5 gets hurt, move Obi up, and you can play him. Maybe they would play Wiseman in that case. But I bring all that up to say that doesn't sound awesome. They just picked this guy in the lottery, and you'd like to be able to play him, but they have a lot of talent that they should be playing, that they're a good team. I think that is still progress. He will play a lot more this year because of that, where he is easily the 11th man who has lots of opportunities to actually play, but you have to prove it and actually fit in and be better, of course, to earn those minutes. They're a team trying to win games now. But I think that is the outlook that they should be pitching, is that there will be more chances for him when injuries happen, and maybe he can earn a permanent role by playing well in those minutes. So yeah, I agree that it's kind of fuzzy right now and kind of weird that how little he has played given what their reality was entering last season. But I think it is trending towards him playing more and potentially even more the year after when they have to make some financial decisions.
Two things. I checked what you predicted last season, and you predicted Obi Toppin to start, so congratulations. Okay. You didn't go with Jarace Walker. You had him in the reserve role, but also looking at some of Toppin Walker's numbers, like really good steal rate, really good block rate, but finished at 42% in the rim in his 330 minutes in the NBA. That's really bad. Shot well from three, but like that needs to improve. Interestingly, his EPM estimated plus minus was higher than Benedict Mathurin's. Not that it was good; it was negative 2.7. But there were some flashes there. But you're right; it's about this team is winning, right? They want to win, and there's no just easy spot to fit him in because I take Aaron Nesmith off, but he does this, or Obi Toppin comes off, but he does this, and there's just it is just hard, and sometimes. I also think that, like, I said it. I said, look, he's a top 7 pick, and he may not play a big role for 2 years. That's really weird. But there's also something to be said that that's just a mentality that we've sort of drilled into our head. And maybe it's okay if these guys don't play big roles and we wait for the right opportunity and they play at the time when it makes the most sense, as a lot of other sports do, versus like, hey, he's got to play and he's got to be in that spot. I think it's actually, while it's frustrating and it's weird, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, because he could come in year 3. You said other guys move on, get injured, he steps in, he's like, holy shit, this guy's already at this level because we've taken the time and pushed him into the spot where he needs to be, versus like we just give him minutes because we invested in it. Like, so I'm intrigued. I think there's still a lot there. It is a different process for a pick that high, but I'm not writing that off as like a bust or anything like that, Tony. Now, I did ask you, what is your big, bold prediction for this season? I want you to really expand on this one. We don't have to really expand, just expand a little bit. You said there'll be a puzzling trade. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think this is the next calendar year thing to look out for the Pacers, because they are currently, like I mentioned earlier, extremely close to the luxury tax. Next year, they're going to be about $30 million away before paying Miles Turner or TJ McConnell or Isaiah Jackson. And then the following year, Benedict Mathurin, guess what? You're up for money. So they can't really afford the entire current structure of their team. And they are also very clearly probably in need of one more upgrade, sizable, like very, very good player. And so I don't know if that player becomes available this season, but because of their financial reality, I bet in the next 12 to 18 months, they make a trade either involving someone who's good or a young player that has some clear upside that makes everybody go, why did they do that? And it's not that it will be like a bad value trade. It will just be puzzling in that it was very financially motivated, and it's something they needed to do to make their team make sense long-term, because they have a long runway with this Haliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam grouping now. That's 3+ years of all those guys. But to make it all hum and make it actually a team that can contend, they might have to do a trade that makes everybody go, why did they do that? Well, that's why, because the money is going to be a factor. And we've seen it this summer with the small cap growth and the aprons. Teams operate differently.
They do. Let's look at the team record. This team won 47 games last season. Obviously, they made the Eastern Conference Finals, but they were a 6th seed. Tony, you predicted that they would be exactly the same win-loss record.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that mainly because the Eastern Conference is better, even though we're expecting better health from Haliburton, more consistency? We've got a full season from Siakam. And where do you think a 47-win season places them? Is it play-in? Probably not, but is it like top 4? Is it top 6 again?
Yeah, I think 47 for the reasons you described. I think they'll be a little better than last year for some of those internal development reasons we talked about. You know, that their rotation's largely the same. This team knows how to play together. Continuity's great, but the Knicks got Mikal Bridges, and the Cavs are still really good, and the Sixers, who they finished ahead of, are better, for example, than last year, and the Bucks are better. So, like, these are teams that are just tough to beat. So maybe their record against those top teams gets a little worse. They also were, like, improbably bad against awful teams last year, right? They lost to Charlotte twice. They lost to the Nets. They lost to the Wizards. They lost to everybody who stunk last year at least once, except for Detroit. They lost to Portland twice, right? So there's a lot of balancing of their, for lack of a better term, like resume, as to use a college term, for their wins and losses. But I think that because some other teams got better, the East in general is probably a little worse, but the West is better. I think they're probably going to finish with about the same number of wins. And I think in the East, that'll land them somewhere between 5, 6, and 7. But they've proven that they can beat these top teams, right? They beat Boston twice last year. They beat Philly twice last year. They were good against they swept OKC last year, right? They swept OKC and got swept by Portland, right? It's a very confusing team. So, how that all balances out, it's going to be hard to say. But I think in general, I think most people feel this way. A lot of teams got at least a little better, if not a lot better, this offseason. And so teams that just got a little better, yeah, they're better. But how much does that amount to in terms of wins? I think it probably comes out in the wash for the Pacers, even though their standing spot will maybe be a little better.
Yeah, I can say that. We looked at the very start of the show of who's in, who's out, and it's like, okay, it's about the same. So being about the same makes sense. There are obviously things that can break either way, but I think that makes sense. Now, Tony, I do want to finish this with a quiz. We head into the 24-25 season, and people who have watched this show know what I'm going to ask you. So I'm going to ask you this now. It's really simple stuff. It's the 24-25 season. Who is the first name that comes to your mind that wore number 24 or 25 for the Indiana Pacers?
Oh my gosh, Jalen Smith.
Jalen Smith was the most recent number 25. Correct.
Yes. 24? I don't know if I can do. Did Ben Moore wear 24 or was he 20? I think he was 20.
Well, he didn't wear 24, so he's not there. But it was someone who was on the team last season.
Oh, no, that's not good. That's really not good. Last season, and I can't remember. Are they gone? They're not gone.
Oh, they're gone, yeah. They're gone. They wanted to go.
Oh, Buddy Hield wore 24.
Buddy Hield.
He switched to 7. That's why it threw me off so much.
Buddy Hield did wear 24. I'm looking at the list of names. You will remember this when I tell you, but remember Paul George used to be 24?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
I thought there had to be someone more recent than him.
There was. Alizé Johnson was between Paul George and Buddy Hield.
Dang.
And
That's
then
a good one.
Raheem Christmas was a number 25 legend, as was Al Jefferson. Yep. What else? Any other funny names? I think Quinn Buckner was 25 back in the 80s. There you go.
What a pull these are. Wow.
Yeah, so there's a list of names there for the 24-25 season. Jalen Smith, Buddy Hield, the Pacers, they're removing their rearview mirrors. They've gotten rid of their 24 and 25. They're going to bring new 24s and 25s in for the 24 and 25 season. I've said that word too many times. Tony East, tell us what's going on over at Locked On Pacers.
Yeah, lots of stuff like this. Looking ahead next year, Dustin Dopierek and I are going to talk on tomorrow's show for you guys listening about the biggest storylines for this Pacers team, diving in deeper on a lot of these young guys, how this team clicks. Can Haliburton see how it can be better? All sorts of good stuff. You'll want to check it out.
Go and check it out, Tony. Thank you again for coming on and chatting about the Pacers with me.
Happy to do it, Josh.
And that is the end of today's show. I think there is a second show coming out today. And for all of you legends who live up in Toronto, you know, my favorite people, we are doing the Raptors season preview. That's going to be full of positivity, joy, and admiration for my favorite city, country, and team. We're going to be doing that coming up later on. So if you're looking forward to that, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.